Okay, I think yeah. And you can actually, I think there's some way you can see the change histories of the page. You can see, yeah. So I made a few changes, updated a few things. So that was why it was changing. But anyway, so I tried to break mostly into front end and back end, and may not be ideal. And currently it looks like there's a lot more in the front end than back end. But I think the amount of work is actually roughly equivalent. The reason being the list on the back end is shorter is because many of these are not quite clear how we do it. And whereas, say, this part, the front end, we know much better. So I might just go through this quickly, explaining each point. And if you have any questions, just stop me and ask. Yeah? Okay. So front end, so we have browser window. So essentially, this is the content script in the Chrome extension we're injecting into each pages. And these are the functions and which was in the old sense map or the master branch of the sense map already. So they all have a little star there, which means the code is almost already there. We need to move them over to the rebuild branch and to do testing. So text highlighting, just highlight the text so people can select some text just as I did and right click and choose highlight, for example. And you can do similar things for image highlighting as well, but it does not say change the background of image. It just say, okay, I associate this picture with particularly page, and then that picture will be shown in the history map. And if you, yeah, um, okay, yeah. Okay. Yeah, and we can look at we can look into more into details exactly what to capture and how to capture it a little bit later. And it's really depends on what is needed for the user. Say, for example, if it's important for them to be able to just select anything and then try to recognize text and image a little bit later, that's also fine. We can do that. But I think for text highlighting, if you just select text, probably it will be easier. For the image, we'll see. Okay, and so annotation is different in the sense it's just something you add onto the page. The user can write a note. So these are not text existing on the current page. And this one is again existing the old version of sense map where you click a node in history map or clicked a picture or highlighted the text in the node in the history map, it will jump back to the same position of text in the tab. Does that make sense? Or yeah? And that tab will be reopened. Yeah. Yeah. If it's otherwise, I mean, if there's no highlighted text, it just goes straight to the top of the page. Yeah, and actually, this is okay. I was going to say it after I go through the features, but actually, the first step when we're going through this is actually to write down the behaviors. So if you look at, so we will write down the behaviors. So exactly, say text highlighting would work, or the go back to a tab, or highlighting annotation will work. We'll write them down first, so it's clear what they should behave before we write the test and the code. Okay, history map. And the first one is called page screenshot. And previously, if you mouse over a node, it will show you a screenshot of that particular page, like a thumbnail or smaller version of the page. And it might be useful to help you identify which page that is, but maybe here it's not critical.
Hello?
Okay, and next part is to use the background color to indicate the status of the tab. So the active tab, so which the tab is shown in the browser, is shown as blue, and the ones and which you user favorite or start and were shown as yellow. So if you remember in the history map, if you mouse over a node, you have a few options to minimize, star, or delete or something. And if you choose star, it should say show the node a different color. So that's fairly straightforward. Again, these no code is already there. Again, next one is quite trivial as well. And so it's used to use dashed borders to show that's a tab which has been created in the browser but has not been seen by the user. Does that make sense? Or for example, you can have a Google search page and you can open a few links from the search page, and only one tab or one result will be shown. The other tabs will not be seen by the user yet, and these were shown with dashed borders. And yeah, you can click on the node, or say if the user just open or select those becomes active tab in the browser later on, then the border also change to solid, not back to. But again, this is a tiny thing. But the reason I put that is because the code is already there, so it will be quite easy to just put them back in. Okay. The next one, and is probably more useful, is as we know, so the history map itself cannot take too much space, otherwise you have no space for the actual tab itself. And as you get more and more nodes in the tab, you will not be able to show everything at the same time, all the nodes. So the idea is actually to at least move the history map so you can always see the latest tab or the nodes for the latest tab. Does that make sense? So mostly a usability thing, so user don't have to say always scroll all the way, for example, to the right to find what he's currently working on. The node label disambiguation, okay? And so another issue is currently if you open a few pages, sometimes the title is too long, so you only see maybe the first 20 characters of the title shown in as a node label. And it could happen these 20 characters actually are the same for a number of nodes. For example, for the same website, they always start with the same title and followed by something else at the end. And then that becomes a little bit difficult for user to tell which node is what. Does that make sense? And so what we want to do is actually just to compare node label with its parent's label and hide the duplicate part at the front. So for example, the child node has the first 20 characters exactly the same as the previous, as its parent. Then I just replace those 20 characters as ... and only show what is afterwards. Yes? So this one is something new, and should be relatively straightforward, and it shouldn't be too difficult to implement. All you need to do is just compare a node with its parent, and if there's any duplication in the label, and try not to show them. Okay, next one is to indicate the last a few tabs that's been opened. So again, so this one is in bracket, so it may not be critical as shown in here. So again, this is useful when you have lots of tabs opened or lots of nodes, and in your browser, it might be useful. Sorry, lots of nodes in the history map. It might be useful to know which are, say, the last 3 tabs I just looked at. So help you to quickly find those, and you might give them a different background color to show, okay, these are the last 3 tabs you opened. Okay, just stop me if there's any questions. If I don't hear anything, assume it's all okay. Yes? Yeah. I mean, next one is how to indicate closed tabs. And then, so one possibility was say, okay, if a tab is closed and its node is shown transparent, and this might not be a good idea, but we will only know after we test it. And for example, later on we're going to talk about being able to save and load a session, and then after you load a previously saved sessions, at that time no tab is opened, and everything will be transparent. Yes, and the phone says that might be too depressing, so we might not do that. And finally, about node resizing. Again, this is for when you have lots of nodes with a fairly small history map window, and you might want to reduce the size of each individual nodes, and so it can fit more in the same display area. But you want to hopefully do this automatically without the involvement of the users. Otherwise, it will be a bit tedious. But and also the other things is, you might have nodes of different sizes, and the older the nodes, the smaller the sizes. The most recent node has the largest size, for example. And this can be a little bit complicated, and we don't really have any code to do that yet. Yes? Okay, good. So the next 3 points are more or less different variations of knowledge map. Knowledge map exists in the old sense map extension, and I call it freeform sense making because you can more or less do anything you want in it. But in the other sense, it's actually not providing very good support for what user want to do. Because in the previous experiment we did, we just find, say, the user spent lots of time just moving the nodes to make sure they are, say, aligned vertically or horizontally, which is not very helpful. So these are 2 variations of the knowledge map. Okay, the first one is just to show all the highlights and annotations in one view. And I'm not sure if you used any, say, Chrome plugins which allows you to highlight the text on web page. Did anyone use some extension like that? Yeah. Okay, so for example, I have one such extension here. I can't even remember what it's called. Called the liner. But what it allows you to highlight the text. I did this, and I did this, and you can do this on many different websites. But what it also allows you is to go to its web page. Eh? Not the. How do you go to its web page? Hey. Yeah. Yeah. And but the point is, yeah. 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 So this is it's actual website, and this is the part I'm trying to show you. So it can show this one, and which is the text I just highlighted, but there's some other things I highlighted before, and it just put everything on a single page. And we're trying to do something similar here. And so basically no, I don't want to highlight it. Basically, no. So what I want to do is I want to see all the highlights and annotations in one view. So basically, Sense Map would allow user to highlight the text or pictures, and it will be useful to have a view like this. So you have different annotations and pictures just in one place. And yeah, but also it could be a different way, say, so one possibility, what I'm writing here, is to actually just make this a different view of history map, because on history map, let me just go to Sense Map page. You will have these shown anyway. You will have, say, if you look at this picture here, history map, you have the pictures highlighted text anyway. So for example, if you could just click the button, you minimize everything else which does not have, say, highlighted text or pictures, and you only keep those. I think they'll provide something similar effect of this, probably better as well. Does that make sense? Or so you click one button, so all these nodes, which doesn't have highlights and no annotations, will get minimized. So you only see the pictures and your nodes. Okay. And finally, this one. Yeah, this is a bit tricky and probably the most challenging part of among everything. So this is a very specific case to support online shopping, and so we want to build a particular sense map specifically only for this. And so if you remember the digital camera examples I gave when I explained sense map, so tool, so this is a kind of
Bob would like to be an accountant.
particularly tailored for that.
Last time I turned up in a shirt and tie. You know, people sometimes.
So essentially something like creating a table, so allow you collect information for different cameras. And this table will change or as you go. So you might find different models, but it also maybe came up different attributes you want to include to compare. So it will change as you go. Does that make sense? Yeah? Just think of like say Excel spreadsheet. You have the columns as different things you want to compare, like a price, pixel numbers, weight, etc. And the rows are different models, right? But these columns and rows will change as you go. You might have find more models, you might have more things you want to compare. But also maybe a little bit intelligently, for example, and the sense map can automatically extract the information you want to compare. For example, and Fong suggested is actually he already did some work on this, but also what he can do is, for example, he can pass, say, an Amazon page for a particular camera. Then you can automatically extract all the, say, the price, the shipping cost, pixel numbers, all these information automatically from the page. Does that make sense? And then that will make the comparison much easier rather than say have to manually enter all these. You can even say provide a link from the table, the knowledge map, to where the data comes from, or even say track it as it changes or something. That would be really cool.
Yes, you're
Yes?
right. You've got 4 videos already, so
Okay, there's not enough space on my desktop. So yes, I'll do this a bit more selectively.
so I just stop book 2 on.
This one.
Yes, yes. So we definitely, and as I said, we later on we'll try to say discuss the behavior first. So we write down, be more clear. For example, this comparison table for online shopping would exactly how it will behave. And before we move on to writing testing and any actual code, we definitely will do that. Okay.
Some of the others.
Go to the there. We've got the So you've got one.
No, that's completely fine. Let's just throw all the ideas. We have a separate session, just brainstorming, say how the comparison table will work, what's it going to look like, what features it will have, and we record that as one of the documents and the behavior, and before we actually go implement it. Yeah? Yeah. Okay, and now let's move on to backend. Unless there's more questions related to front end.
Turn it into the details.
Okay, let's go backend. Okay, so mostly 2 parts, and first is about storing the information. So currently it uses MongoDB, and I'm open to other options as well. But MongoDB seems to be a quite popular option for JSON storage. And there's more fancy options like Elasticsearch, but I'm not familiar with it. Could take a while to learn. Okay, a few things.
All right.
Okay, yeah.
No, it's just the desktop needs time.
Sorry, who has a limit?
Or some of these could be turned into shortcuts and placed somewhere else.
There's also one other document in that folder where I've done an analysis of what we've got. You know, sort of how long this spent.
Oh yeah. And so most likely we're gonna set up MongoDB on our own server, and all the people using SenseMap will send their data to this particular server. We currently have facility to host this on the university server, so we don't have to pay anything. But if there's issues with that in terms, for example, reliability, we might decide to move on to, say, like Amazon or some cloud host will be fast and more reliable, but that's a bit later. For now, for the testing, we just say we have kind of public accessible server. Okay, and this will be using REST APIs. And does it make sense to you what REST API is, or? Okay, So basically, the idea is something you don't really want to create a username password for the MongoDB for every users, because you don't really want them to be able to access the inside of the MongoDB or the database. Rather, say you want them to send a request to your service and you can respond. And so basically, it's just like any other online APIs, for example, Google Map APIs, and they provide certain functions you can call and it will return the data you want. And we have to set up the API interface for the SenseMap server. Basically, user can send a request to do the things listed below. Yeah. So the first thing is user needs to be logging. So basically, we need a way to identify a user, so we can know, okay, and they can retrieve his or save his or her files or SenseMap sessions. And the way to do that, probably easiest way, is to use their Chrome account. And because I think you have to have a Chrome account to install the extension, and we can just use that as the identifier. Yeah. I think the Chrome account is just your Gmail address. That's all we can get. I think, for example, currently, if you look at, so that's Chrome. I logged in as Kai, and it has my email address there. I think we just use that information. Yeah. And it's not really login because we're not going to any say set up password, and just an identifier of the user this Chrome account.
How do you get all the pay for your
I haven't managed to do anything. Other stuff's been getting in the way.
Sorry, say it again.
Well, there's two. There's the thing I've got to do for this Cape thing.
Yeah.
And then there's the qualitative analysis, the previous one.
Yeah.
Which we've decided we're going to have a crack at Kai with.
Yeah.
Yeah, the September deadline. But the reason
Yeah.
is it's a win-win. We tend to get good reviews, useful reviews.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
and so it doesn't get.
Yeah, I think we should provide options, and so you can. So essentially, you can provide an email address, so we can identify you, or you can just browse as it is. But in that case, we'll not be able to save your sessions. Basically, if you close your SenseMap, everything will disappear or lost. Yeah. And I mean, user might be quite happy to do that initially just to test. But we will not be getting any data for the experiment in that case. But we definitely should give them the option. Okay, the next one is quite straightforward to explain. So, for example, you use a SenseMap for a couple of hours. You want to be able to save that, continue next time. And we want to save this in the MongoDB on the MongoDB server. So basically, you have a save button in SenseMap. You can click and it will save everything. Or even this will be done automatically for you. Say once you logged in, everything will be saved. Yes, so yeah. So that's the case, and if the user has multiple sessions, so if I spend doing some work on camera today, and tomorrow, and next time I want to look at something related to, I don't know, rent a house in Hendon, for example. Then these two are not relevant, so I don't really want to continue from what I stopped in the digital camera part. I want to create different sessions. And then we may want to provide a list somewhere user can select from different sessions. Yeah. I'm not sure if this like it has to be a splash screen at the beginning, because if you don't have anything to start with, there's no need, right? Only useful if you have several sessions to pick from. Yeah, but again, these are like a design details. We can design exactly how do we show this, make this available. Yeah, and again, so I think what Ride said is already covered this, so we need to provide a means for the user to retrieve if they saved something previously. And okay, these two actually will probably not be able to do, but will be quite fun. For example, I did some research on camera, buying a digital camera, and I found and I can share this with my friends to get help, or just to show them what I have done. I'm quite proud of my choice. I spent so much time, etc., etc. Yeah.
Because I think that would be one, whatever, Walker or Martin, that's a useful collective output. We've got enough there to analyse together.
Yeah.
Although we've kind of made them do the floor 3 and almost education on the jigsaw, I didn't realise that was not full set on the jigsaw.
Yeah, I think yeah, I mean the information is stored centrally, so it will be actually quite easy, and you can say generate an ID for a particular session if you want to share. I can even. The difficulty is, for example, what will be the easiest way for them to do that? Who can see it in terms of control? That can be a bit tricky. So by default, you probably don't want other people to see your sessions. And how do you say, add friend to your list or something? That can be a bit tricky.
I did an analysis.
That's difficult. In terms actually to do, just say, okay, I want to give X and say provide that information to someone else. That should be fairly straightforward.
So the original.
But we can have a look and discussion as well. This is something definitely I want to try later, if not in the first online study. And the next one is similar to this. So basically, this is the time I'm looking for a digital camera. I want to see what other sense map sessions other people have done on digital camera. So ideally, I can type in digital cameras, and it will returns all the public sessions, which is related to digital camera, and I can see what other people have done. So again, it's maybe not too difficult to implement, but if we have time, let's do that in this one. If not, maybe leave it later. Yes? Okay. The next part, this gets a little bit, say, academic. Okay, so we want to, basically, we will do the experiment, we collect the data, and we want to do different type of statistical analysis. So this could be fairly simple ones. And for example, just compute average, minimum, maximum, and different quantiles. So you're all familiar with this, right? Yeah. And also there's one type which is quite important, is a little bit complex, and is called something like a t-test or a ANOVA test. Have you heard of those?
Right, so maybe
Okay, so this is very common, and the typical example is, for example, you testing a new drug, and you want to know whether it's effective or not. So you have two groups of participants. One group you give them the drug, and the other group you give them something called a placebo, which you tell them is a drug, but actually doesn't do anything. For example, just flour or something.
probably kick off with
and then after a while you measure something from the two groups. For example, the drug is meant to maybe reduce blood pressure, and you measure what their blood pressure is and what happens after, say, try the drugs for 3 months and see if there's any difference. And in the end, you can simply just average the changes between the two groups and see if there's any difference, right? But then there's a chance any difference is a result of a randomness. So, for example, if a person just happens to be more healthy or start taking exercise, it's not quite a result of your drug. Okay, and how do you basically there's some methods can tell you what is the statistically likelihood the difference is a result of the random changes between the subjects.
Yeah, I think we can probably do.
Okay, so all these is just try to say a more rigorous way doing comparisons. And for example, in the study, we want to see if the user did any, if the sense map help user improve the way they do sense making, and we have to define what that means. Improving, is that make them more faster, find more relevant information, make a better choice, etc., etc. And we can compare between the users, say before and after they use the tools, or even how they changes over the time as they get more familiar with the tools. Do these are more complex analysis.
Yeah, I'm getting. Yes, I think perhaps. Much as I love these, cheers me up when I'm doing those sessions. Maybe we should investigate.
Yes, yes. And but here the statistical analysis is actually more like, okay, you have two groups of students, they all want to find the university. One group use sense map, the other not. Other do not. How do you compare them to show any benefits of using sense map? Yeah. Yeah. So there's like a almost like a standard way of doing this, but it can be get a little bit complex in terms of statistics. Yeah. And also we can do similar things for the data we collect through Google Analytics. So these are all these demographic information. You can even say, okay, is a female using the tool better than the male, or say the people in Pakistan is learning the tools much faster than the people learning the tools in UK or something. So you can do lots of things. I can do. Okay, and the last bit is related to these 2 points before, and so to do this analysis, and especially comparison between two conditions, you need to have to set up two conditions. And for example, one group using sense mapping, others not. And sometimes it might just be say, okay, let's pick this particular feature, and automatic panning and zooming. And you can say let half of user with this feature in sense map and half of the other user with this feature disabled during when they're using sense map, and then you can compare their performances. Do they behave differently? How fast they find certain things, etc., etc. Yeah, and you really want to do this programmatically. Basically, you can set up this use code. So you can just say, and such as you have a configuration file for sense map, you can just say an automatic auto panning off. And then so all these users, when you use sense map, this feature will not be there. And you can control this easily. No, yeah. So I mean, it will work similar to an option page. People, but you do not really want to use it to have this control, because you, as the people doing experiment, and you want to control how many people are using which condition. And I mean, the best example is actually, did you heard of the story of, say, from Google, they did this experiment called 50 Shades of Blue. Anyone heard of blue? Yeah. Okay, this got nothing to do with the 50 Shades of Grey, okay? No. It's less sophisticated like that. So what happens is, say, people Google used to put a blue background on the ad. And you can have many different level of blues, and they want to find out which shade of blue works best for the ad. So what they did is, for all the people visiting their web pages, everyone gets a slightly different shade of blue. So maybe you have 1 billion people visit Google today. Say 10,000 get the first shade of blue, other 10 million get the second shade, third million get a different shade of blue. And then you can see, okay, for each shade, how good is the conversion of how many people actually clicked on the ad. And then you pick the shade of blue which had the most people to click on the ad.
Actually try and get that done before.
Yeah. A/B testing, very large scales, because you have many people using it. The user does not be aware of this. User does not aware. They just see one ad with particular shade of blue. They might not even pay that much attention to the color at all. But actually, it is doing an experiment user and Google user data to decide which color to use. So it's similar what we do here. For example, we can testing whether one feature is useful or not by, say, when people using it, some people will get it, some people will not. And then we can test, and by the feedback or the data we collect, whether we can compare to see is the feature actually helping in what way, etc., etc. And the best way to do this is to do this automatically. So you can set up, say, which the feature you want to be turned on and off, and then when people log in, you can, based on their information, to automatically put them into one of the groups, either the on group or off group. The user might not be very aware of that, but you, as an administrator or the people doing experiment, you can collect data and then use that to compare. Yes. Yeah. So this is actually will be the main way we're doing the experiment, because we're going to make the sense map available and get as many people to use it as possible, hundreds or maybe even thousands, depends on how popular you are. And then we can say just automatically, people will be just using sense map, they are not aware, and we partition them into different conditions from the server side, from the backend, and then we can collect the experiment data. Yeah. So this is the last bit will involve, say, creating, for example, a configuration files. So you can, say, change the behavior of sense map. Depends on the configuration file, and you can use some code to automatically generate these configuration files. Depends on the experiment you want. Yeah. Okay. And okay. Sorry for taking so long, but now we're almost the end. And so I already mentioned I roughly want to divide these four of us into front and back end team. And Feng and I will be working with both teams. And so I think so far, and Shazab said he might won't be interested in back end. Hamza is back end as well. Oh, okay. Yeah. What about Riday? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So first, I mean, this is just a rough idea. So
Yeah.
There's actually much more but then that's varying degrees of time and error, you know, that people learn. Yeah, so that's looking good.
Yeah.
One is the Bruce Winston Stockport one road, and then
Oh yes, right.
and there's the Annowing one, and then there's the Stockport.
Yes, oh yes, I've got a reply to, was it you who, actually, I must have a look, was it you who replied to me?
Okay, and
No, she didn't say anything.
Good timing on the Tuesday.
yeah.
Yeah, I'll get back to Ryan and say, yeah, it was just the, what did he say?
Yeah.
People want to push back the sessions to start a bit later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You said two quite late, which I
Mm.
one was the phone right to the
Yeah. And actually, so the work actually is a REST API is actually you need to create the API yourself. For example, using some JavaScript library or even use some Node.js packages. That will involve some work as well. And also the last part about experiment data analysis. There's quite a bit of learning there to understand these analysis and implement them. Yeah, or find the right libraries. Okay, I just want to say one thing. And currently, this is okay. I also need to talk to Amisha, and we have roughly say 2 people on each team. But at first, it's not fixed. Okay, so it doesn't say if you work in backend, you're not allowed to work on front end. Definitely not. And because most of the time, you can certainly say there are particular things you're interested in, you want to work in. That's completely fine. And also, this kind of division is not fixed as well. Because what we're going to do first is actually to write down the behaviors of each point. And then you might find, okay, I have to learn so much statistics, I'm not going to be able to do that. And then you might change your mind or have a mix of both. Yeah? Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And there's two people's details of who they are and their ages and that.
And I guess it depends. For example,
Oh, yes.
and if for browser window we can fit
Oh, that's helpful, isn't it?
everything into one page, because maybe it's not that complex, for example, to describe all of them, then just do that. And yeah, if it's too much, then we, for example, for history map, we might have to break up into a few pages. It really depends. So if possible to fit in one page, make it not too long, then just do that. Yeah.
Yes. Well, that's why I had sort of
I saw there's a couple of other questions as well. Rede, did you want to say something or? Oh, okay. Yeah.
Not allowed to use the spark system.
Really?
Yeah.
So there's Offerton, and there's, I think, the hotel.
Yeah.
Really straightforward for me.
I think that's a very good point. But I would say we need to establish the interface between the two, the front and back. So you need to be aware of how to pass information to and get information back from the backend through the API, but you don't need to know, okay, how the data is stored in the MongoDB, how do you implement the interface, etc. So definitely the two teams needs to definitely talk to each other to know what they are doing, how do you use the functions from the other part, that's for sure.
Hotel was double in price. So So I should be here. I was impressed by the gym anyway.
I looked at the Premier Inn, I found it in the
Oh yeah.
double, I think about £90 a night or something. Because they've got, those sitting up king size double beds they keep on the time.
Oh right, that's an excuse to.
And you pay a room rate, not a person rate. So.
Yeah. Oh well. Well, those are going right here.
Yeah.
One course next
Okay.
time.
I'm trying to. Okay. So again, I just say let's have the discussion started. We don't really have to decide right now. Definitely not.
Yeah.
Back end.
Tell me what it reminds me of. I've never been to an Ethiopian restaurant. So they have the idea is that they.
Is that okay?
Bread as the plate.
Let me just put that down for now on the page. Can you see I'm editing the meeting page?
Yeah, so that's good. I think that's actually good.
Where is it? No, okay. But let's say, for example, if Amisha also wants to work on back end, Shazab, would you be able to work on the front end or?
Okay, so we've done 2 places.
Say, let's say if Amisha also wants to work on the back end, then we have 3 teams working on the back end, 3 people working on the back end. Shazab, would you be able to work on the front end part or?
Yeah, I'll ask him that actually. Wednesday again. Yeah, that's helpful.
You see, I wondered whether you could put him in studio in the morning, whether he could volunteer
Okay.
in the afternoon if you could volunteer.
Yeah, that might be nice.
Okay. Yeah. Good. So I'll just put question mark there to make sure nothing is fixed yet. Okay.
But it might not be what
Well, might be ideal. And we'll be parked up there.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually possible. That's actually also possible. One actually way once we write down all the behaviors, and then we can just assign by the behaviors. So, and you work on this text highlighting for the browser window and user login using Chrome account. That's also fine.
I've discovered another route to the M1 that takes you through, well, Apple and Buxton are pretty horrible here in Russia.
And
So it's worth a try of another one. It takes you out in Chesterfield. That's so good about it. I'll see if it might be. But yeah, I mean, if we, as long as I'm getting away.
yeah, and but also may be useful actually to pair up, say 2 people working on the same thing. It might actually, for example, 2 people work together on the user login, actually make it faster and make the quality of the code better. Yeah.
No. Yeah. Yeah, so it's quite efficient, isn't it?
Okay, yeah, okay. Okay, let's discuss exactly how it works, and after we do the behavior. So, okay, so the action points now for the meeting. So I already did this. Remaining the files change from say browser dash province to browser, capital P, provenance, and JS. I also changed the code as well. Seems to be working.
Yeah.
And
Brian is 9:30, okay.
what we need to do is actually to creating the behaviors for each of. So basically, we still follow this behavior
Yeah, sure.
behavior test and then code pattern. So we need to create a description for all these behaviors and for the things listed here on this page. Okay, and then we can decide who will be on which team. And then finally, we need to decide, okay, we're going to finish which for each week or something like that. Yes? Yeah? Okay. So currently, because there's only 4 of us, so how about Reday and Shazab? You're creating the behaviors for the backend, and Hamza and I were creating the behavior for the front end. And then we can ask Misha and Fonzie what they can contribute.
They do have a habit of changing it at the
Yeah,
last minute.
and yeah.
So that would be right. It's 10:15, the meeting.
Yes. Very good point. So yes, you should update your test.
Yeah, mind you, I could
Let me just add down here so we don't forget.
So I might be able to,
So probably here,
that's a 1:30 start.
update existing test
Well, I could certainly
using the new sign-on example and
yeah, you have to go King's Cross, Paddington, and then Overground. Because it's the nearest station plus Ealing, which is an overground station.
Oh, really? It's not got underground station?
No, Ealing Broadway is quite.
Does that make sense? Or so basically, yeah, don't waste the work you have done so far and merge them into the reboot bunch and make it work, and we can get all the tests working.
No, I just need to make my excuses. I'll probably have a word with Keith.
Yes, pull request. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Looks good.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Oh, I don't
Okay.
need to do anything. What do I need to do? This is.
Okay, it's a different one.
This is
Okay.
actually quite nice compared to what that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I'll just.
Oh, that's even better. Huh? Okay. No, it's okay. It's okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's a healthy thing. That's not a delusion. No.
Okay. Yeah. That's completely fine. Okay. So Hamza mentioned he can have a placement next week as well, so he's gonna be away. I think we can definitely play around these things, your arrangement, and yeah, let's adjust the plan. So yeah, so okay, let's say action point. So how about say for Reddit and Shazab, you can create at least the first version of the behavior for the backend by the end of next week. So maybe, I mean, you two can decide who is doing which part, and maybe Reddit can do something before he left, or even, yeah. Would that be it? Sorry?
It was the old one, Scotch and John,
Yeah,
but even for the optional ones, do it as well, and then we can decide whether. Sorry? Yes, still analysis of them, because that's we definitely need.
Actually, I can tell right.
Yeah, and actually, if you need more help with the say the statistical analysis part, actually I can contribute as well, because I mean you might not be that familiar.
Take a bit of a break when we get together, aren't we?
Well, we've still got some more to do in London, but then,
Sure.
you know, it's fair.
But we've got more than one stuff to analyse. I can't do that at the moment.
Yeah, I suppose so. Actually, well, if we're only,
Oh,
because I think that the really nice one is the evening one, if we can get it there, because it's a housing project. I think this actually one from, I must take this out of my pocket, because I know it's from Monday. Luckily, they managed to remain dry. Well, I went for a night hike or an evening hike around Hampstead Heath last night.
Oh,
With this group, yeah, we got out by nightfall, and it was a big group.
You told me that's got my face.
thumbs out. Do you have any time at all
And
to do the front end behavior?
yeah, I went to this thing on.
Wow. Okay. But this week, like tomorrow or something, do something.
Oh, right, that one, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Or I can do most of this first, and then maybe you can do a little bit more later. Or just
Cases.
okay. Yeah. So maybe after that then. Okay. I think that's all. Anything else? Or?